Welcome to Docs on Call, brought to you by Northeast OBGYN.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Nolf McDonald. The excitement of a pregnancy can tragically turn to devastation due to a loss of that pregnancy. Now imagine that devastation over and over and over. Miscarriage and recurrent pregnancy loss affects many women and their families. Tonight, we will discuss the causes and, yes, treatments of this condition. Here to answer your questions is Dr. Christopher Stroud with Northeast OBGYN. Dr. Stroud, welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you, too. And last month, during this show, we came up with this idea, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So many of our callers, when we were talking about infertility, actually had questions related to recurrent pregnancy loss. So here we are.
Here we are, right on set. We decided let's do this next month. Let's define a recurrent pregnancy loss.
Yes, certainly. Actually, from a statistical standpoint, we're talking about 3 or more consecutive pregnancy losses. But the reality is most experts will begin an evaluation of a patient after she's experienced the second loss.
And how prevalent is this?
You know, sadly, it's very common. As many as 5 to 10% of couples will experience recurrent pregnancy loss, meaning 3 or more losses. But the reality is more than 20% of couples will experience 2 losses. So we're talking about something that's sadly very common.
And how many experience 1 loss?
You know, the natural pregnancy rate loss, or 1 loss, is somewhere between 20 and 25%, and that's across all age groups. It's somewhat more prevalent as we age, somewhat less prevalent when we're younger.
Would people not even know that they miscarried?
You know, that's interesting. It wasn't too long ago that pregnancy tests were not so readily available. Now they're relatively inexpensive and anyone can purchase them in a drugstore. But just a few years ago, many women would be late for a period and think they were simply late, and the reality is they were pregnant and they had a very early pregnancy loss. Today we find out very, very soon when someone's pregnant. Therefore, we appear to be more aware of pregnancy loss.
Recurrent pregnancy loss, when does this take place in the gestation period?
You know, the vast majority of losses occur before the 12th week of pregnancy. We start dating a pregnancy based on the first day of the last menstrual period. So within the initial 12 weeks of pregnancy, that's when we see the vast majority of those losses.
What are the causes of this?
Sure, the causes are many and in many ways complicated. First of all, there's a natural loss rate. I think a lot of patients are shocked to learn that between 20 and 25% of every conception is lost, and there's nothing that can be done about that. That's the biological or natural loss rate. So that's certainly one cause of a lost pregnancy. But then there are a vast number of other causes. We think about genetic abnormalities of the fetus or the baby. We think about abnormalities of the woman's uterus or of her cervix, a condition called cervical incompetence, or a condition where the uterus has a dividing wall in the center called a septate uterus. Then we think about genetic abnormalities in either the mother or the father or both that produce a pregnancy that's destined to fail. There's also a category of abnormalities that are related to the mom's immune system that we call immune disorders, that in and of themselves don't necessarily cause the woman a problem until she becomes pregnant and then begins to experience a loss. An example of that are antiphospholipid antibody syndromes. That's sort of a difficult term, but there's a list of others with equally difficult names that can cause pregnancy loss.
What about hormones?
Certainly, hormonal abnormalities are a common cause of losses, as well as endocrine problems such as thyroid disease and diabetes.
My goodness, now you were saying genetic problems within the husband or the male.
Yes.
Expound on that.
Yeah, there's actually a series of abnormalities. The most common we call translocations, where there's an abnormality on a husband's chromosome. If the very same abnormality exists in the woman's chromosome and they come together, they'll produce a fetus, in many cases, that's destined to fail in early pregnancy.
That's amazing. I wasn't aware that the men played a role in that.
Absolutely, and as part of the evaluation for recurrent pregnancy loss, very often we'll ask to get chromosomal studies done on both members of the family. And that's sometimes hard to understand why we would want to test the father, but you've said it nicely.
When you were talking about evaluation, what do couples who are experiencing recurrent pregnancy loss do? What are their steps that they do?
You know, certainly the first step is they come and see, hopefully, a qualified gynecologist obstetrician to talk about this. And we're going to begin with an exhaustive history and physical examination, including a detailed family history, and really looking deeply into the person's medical history. Then we're going to start thinking about laboratory studies, looking for some of the causes that we talked about. There may be imaging studies, such as an ultrasound of the uterus, or a test that's called an HSG, we talked about last time a little bit. That stands for hysterosalpingogram. That's a radiology study where we inject dye into the cervix and then photograph that dye with an X-ray, and it gives us an idea of how the uterus is shaped and are there abnormalities within the uterus.
When you find these abnormalities, can you do anything about it?
Yes, the good news is, yes, very often, and I would say most of the time, there's something that we can do. If there's a septum in the uterus, there's a surgery sometimes to repair that. If the condition known as cervical incompetence exists, there's a procedure we can do to repair that as well. So there is hope for most of the abnormalities that we encounter.
What other treatments can you do that would give couples hope that are going through these recurrent pregnancy losses?
Sure. The other category of losses are related to the immune disorders that I described. And in many cases, depending on the specifics of that abnormality with that particular patient, something as simple as a baby aspirin a day can prevent that pregnancy from being lost. That, sometimes combined with low dose of heparin in an injectable form, can be all that a patient needs to maintain a normal and a healthy pregnancy.
We were talking last time about infertility, and that's when we started getting our phone calls about pregnancy losses over and over and over again. What role does, say, an adoption of a child play in these pregnancy losses?
Well, there are certainly couples that decide to forego additional attempts at pregnancy. You can imagine how devastating it might be for a couple who's experienced, 2 or 3 losses, and they may decide to just give up and to pursue adoption as a way to build their family. Certainly we encounter that very, very often, and it's the right choice for some couples.
And when they do adopt, we've heard over and over again that sometimes people become pregnant. Now, how does that fit in with the whole treatment or psychological aspect?
Well, it often ends up in a family that's larger maybe than the family intended to have. I certainly don't think there's a connection between the adoption and getting pregnant. What's more likely is that just more time went by and certainly allowed things to happen over time.
My goodness. Well, I've wondered, and this is probably just a term here, but I've wondered, what is the difference if I were to say that someone had a pregnancy loss or a miscarriage and someone had a stillborn birth? What would you say would be the difference?
It's a good question. When we talk about miscarriage, we're really talking about early pregnancy loss, typically in the first trimester and maybe early second trimester. By and large, when we talk about stillbirth, that's typically much later in the pregnancy, much nearer term when an infant dies, usually before the onset of labor.
Are we seeing an increase in pregnancy loss over the years, say in the last 100 years, or is it about the same? And are we talking worldwide or in America?
Sure, both worldwide and America. It's probably stable and not changing. We're probably encountering or discovering many, many more losses because we look so much more and so much earlier. And again, as I mentioned earlier, access to good, accurate pregnancy testing is very affordable and very available. And as a result, we find out about many, many more early pregnancies, and as a result, we find out more about early pregnancy losses.
Talk to me about the symptoms of pregnancy loss.
Miscarriage, for the most part, is preceded with menstrual-style cramping and bleeding. Bleeding in early pregnancy is certainly never encouraging, but when bleeding is combined with cramping of a menstrual nature, by definition, that's called a threatened miscarriage. And that very often is the first symptom that we encounter.
And I want you to know out there, if you have any questions for Dr. Stroud, please call us, because he is a wealth of information for this, and just dial 483-8331. Thank you. How do we treat a person who has had a pregnancy loss versus someone who has had a child who is stillborn? What kind of, does your office in Northeast OBGYN, what do you do for the women in both cases?
I think you bring up an important point, because anyone that's had a stillbirth, I think for the most part, everyone realizes how devastating and traumatic that can be emotionally to a family, to a mother, to a father, their extended family, perhaps their other children. I think too often we fail to recognize how devastating early loss can be. I think women that have experienced it, if we could poll them, they would say the worst thing they could ever hear from someone is, well, don't worry, you can always get pregnant again. I think sometimes we fail to appreciate that that loss is just as devastating, just as traumatic as a loss later on, maybe even the loss of a child after birth. So we have to be sensitive to that. We've got to remember that it affects everyone in the family and every aspect of the family, and to try to coax patients through that with a lot of support.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with a stillborn birth, for instance, how is a person treated in the hospital?
Yes, the medical treatment is different. With a stillbirth, sadly, the patient has to go through labor and deliver that child. Very devastating condition for anyone to go through. With early pregnancy loss, very often the woman experiences severe cramping, maybe heavy bleeding, and it manages itself spontaneously. There are those times, however, when the natural process goes astray a bit, and the bleeding is prolonged and the pain is intense, and we have to intervene. And that typically means a D&C, or a dilatation and curettage, to complete the process.
When you encounter a woman who has had a couple of recurrent pregnancy losses, and maybe 2 to 3, what do you advise the woman and her husband?
Well, the first thing we want to do is to begin this evaluation, and I want to make them understand there is hope. The first thing we have to do is find out what's causing the losses. Once we have that, then we can begin tailoring and customizing a treatment plan to help them address that.
Do you have them wait a certain amount of time after a pregnancy loss to have sexual relations?
You know, that's a great question. A lot of people have been told and believe that they need to wait X amount of time or X amount of months. Medically speaking, there's probably not a good reason to wait. Emotionally or psychologically speaking, that's a different story. And if you think about it, if there's a 25% chance that every time a pregnancy occurs there's a loss, can you imagine how devastating it would be to have maybe 2 losses within 3 months? So I sometimes counsel patients, think about that. Are you really ready to take that chance again? Would you be better off if you spend a little bit of time getting over this loss? But certainly it's entirely up to patients, and everyone takes that from a different perspective.
How do you counsel your patients, too, who have had a pregnancy loss, say in the 2nd month, and then maybe another one, and people don't even know the family was pregnant? How do you counsel them? Because it's probably just as devastating, isn't it?
It is, because it's a silent condition. Maybe they haven't told anyone they're pregnant, maybe they don't want anyone to know they were, and they certainly don't always want people to know that they had a loss. So we try to help them understand that this is a natural process, that getting through it can be painful. And if it's only been 1 loss, we find ourselves frequently trying to help them understand that this is natural and it is common, and there's still hope not to give up.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you.